Hotties live on our show. Here's romantic and me. We will do this show every Monday. Won't send you on a search, but we got our say. Scrolls with such as teas. Hotties on the show. Oh, hotties on the show. Well, to see their hotness. Hotties on the show. Hotties on the show. To love our hotties.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Hotties of a Show, the series where we look back at some of television's most unforgettable characters, the ones that stood out, stayed with people, and brought a certain energy to the screen that made them impossible to ignore. And today, we're diving into two massive worlds. First, we're heading into the dangerous, brutal, and surprisingly personal world of Rome. Then after that, we move into one of the biggest television phenomenon ever, Game of Thrones. Now, this isn't a ranking. This isn't about who's better. This is about presence, about screen impact, about characters who left impressions for completely different reasons. Some were elegant, some were dangerous, some were mysterious, some had that quiet energy that slowly pulled you in over time. And both of these shows had characters that absolutely fit that category. So let's head to ancient Rome first. There was something different about Rome. The show felt dirty, right? Not bad dirty, like real dirty. The streets looked lived in, the politics felt dangerous, the people felt complicated. Nothing about the world felt polished at all. And because of that, the characters came across more believable. Nobody felt like a cartoon, nobody felt overly glamorous. Even the attractive characters felt grounded in that environment. And that's what made them memorable. Let's start with Niobe, because she brought a completely different kind of presence to the show. I remember when I first saw her, I thought this was the most beautiful person I've ever seen in my life. Niobe wasn't loud. She wasn't trying to dominate every scene. Her appeal came from feeling human. There was sadness to her, regret, stress, emotion always bubbling under the surface. And physically, she had this incredible natural beauty that fit perfectly into the world of Rome. Nothing about her look felt overdone. The softer expressions, the dark features, emotional eyes, it all felt believable instead of a glamorous in a Hollywood way. They actually made her more attractive. She looked like someone who genuinely belonged in that time period. And because Rome was such a harsh world, moments of softness stood out even more. That's part of what made her memorable. A lot of characters in television feel constructed. Niobe felt like a person. The way she interacted with Lucius Vorenus added even more depth because their relationship constantly felt like it was carrying emotional weight. There was tension, pain, history. You could feel it. That emotional realism made her scenes feel heavier than a lot of other shows at the time. Sometimes characters became memorable because they're flashy. Naomi became memorable because she felt real. In a world as chaotic as Rome, that grounded energy stood out immediately. Irene. Now, Irene brought a completely different energy. Where Niobe carried emotional heaviness, Irene brought warmth. There was kindness there, gentleness, and physically, she had a softer beauty that instantly fit that personality. Her smile felt calming. The way she carried herself felt peaceful compared to the tension surrounding most characters on the show. Nothing felt aggressive about her look. It felt inviting. And in Rome, kindness almost felt rare. That made her stand out right away. A lot of the show was manipulation, violence, politics, betrayal, the good stuff. Then suddenly you get a character who feels calm compared to everything around her. That contrast matters. And visually, she fit perfectly into the atmosphere of the show. Nothing felt overly modern. Nothing felt fake. She blended naturally into the world while still standing out within it. That balance is hard to pull off. What really helped her was how genuine her scenes felt. You believed the emotional connections. You believed the care. It gave the audience moments to breathe inside a show that was constantly intense. That's part of why characters like Irene become memorable over time. Not because they dominate every second on screen, but because they bring a different emotional texture to the story. Verena the Elder. Verena the Elder had a very different presence compared to the others. There was maturity there, confidence, a calm authority. She carried herself like someone fully aware of the world around her. And physically, her beauty felt tied directly to that confidence. She didn't rely on flashy presentation. It was more about expressions, posture, and the way she looked at people during scenes. That composed energy made her attractive in a completely different way than the younger or more aggressive characters. And in a show filled with chaos, manipulation, and ambition, that kind of grounded confidence becomes incredibly noticeable. Some characters felt nervous around power. Verena the Elder never really gave off that feeling. There was a steadiness to her, and that steadiness made scenes feel stronger whenever she was involved. What's interesting about Rome is that attraction on the show often wasn't about flashy presentation. It was about personality, presence, how someone carried themselves. And she absolutely had that. She felt intelligent, composed, experienced. That creates a different kind of screen presence than the more energetic or dramatic characters. It's quieter, but it lasts. Cleopatra. Now, Cleopatra, totally different story. The second she appears, the energy changes. Just what the character does, right? There's mystery there immediately, confidence too, but also unpredictability. And physically, she was presented in a way that felt almost hypnotic. The makeup, the eyes, the jewelry, the slow confidence in how she moved. Everything about the character was designed to pull attention. You never fully know what version of her you're going to get, and that made her scenes impossible to ignore. She carried herself like someone who understood influence, not just political influence, personal influence. There was a seductive quality to the performance that completely separated her from most of the other characters. You could feel how other characters reacted around her. That's when you know a character is landing. When they change the atmosphere of scenes just by showing up. And visually, she stood out instantly. The styling, the expressions, the confidence, the calm delivery, everything about the character felt intentional. Cleopatra felt dangerous in a different way than the violence on the show. More psychological, more seductive, and that made her unforgettable. Now, if Rome felt grounded and gritty, Game of Thrones took that scale to another level entirely. Castles, wars, kingdoms, dragons. And somehow, inside all that spectacle, the characters still managed to feel personal. That's part of why the show exploded the way it did. People didn't just care about the battles, they cared about the people. And throughout the series, there was a lot of characters that stood out for completely different reasons. So let's head to Westeros. First one, obvious. We're going to talk about Daenerys Stormborn, Daenerys Targaryen, whatever you want to call her. There's nowhere else to start. Daenerys had one of the biggest transformations in television. Early on, there was vulnerability there, uncertainty. But over time, confidence started to take it over. And that evolution became part of her appeal. People watched her grow from someone constantly controlled by others into someone commanding entire armies. That kind of progression naturally pulls audiences in. And visually, the show constantly framed her in ways that made her feel larger than life. The white hair, the dramatic outfits, the dragons. Everything around the character felt iconic. But underneath all that spectacle, there was still emotion driving the performance. Balance is hard to achieve. All right, next we have Talisa Stark. Talisa Stark brought softness into a very brutal world. There was compassion there, warmth. And because Game of Thrones could be so cold and violent, characters with genuine emotional sincerity stood out fast. Her relationship with Rod Stark felt more human than political. That mattered. A lot of relationships in the show were built on strategy. Their connection felt emotional first. And that made Talisa memorable. She felt calming compared to the chaos around her. Next we have Shay. Shay had attitude immediately. Confidence, sharpness. And what made her interesting was how direct she could be. She didn't feel intimidated by powerful people. That created tension in scenes because you never fully knew how far she pushed things. Her chemistry with Tyrion also carried a lot of emotional complexity. Some moments felt playful, some felt vulnerable, some felt dangerous. That unpredictability made her compelling. And visually, she fit the atmosphere of the show perfectly. Nothing felt overly ridiculous. She felt believable inside that world. All right, next we have Ilaria Sands. Ilaria, who was also in Rome. Ilaria Sand had presence. The second she appeared, you could feel confidence radiating off the character. There was intelligence there too. She carried herself like someone fully aware how dangerous the world was. And unlike characters constantly reacting emotionally to events, Ilaria often felt composed. That composure made her scenes stronger. She felt passionate without feeling reckless. And visually, the styling around Dorne gave her scenes a completely different flavor from the colder parts of Westeros. Everything felt warmer, richer, more sensual. That atmosphere helped her stand out immediately. Ygritte. Ygritte brought personality. A lot of personality. She was sarcastic, confident, and funny. And she never felt overly concerned with impressing anyone. That independence became part of her charm instantly. Her chemistry with Jon Snow worked because it felt natural. It didn't feel overly scripted. The banter, the teasing, the tension, it all flowed naturally. And her wildling look helped separate her visually from many other characters in the show. She felt untamed compared to the polished royalty everywhere else in Westeros. Next, we had Mysaria. Mysaria had mystery, a quieter energy compared to some others. But sometimes quieter characters become memorable specifically because they hold back. You keep wondering what they're thinking, and in a world built around secrets and manipulation, mystery becomes powerful. She carried herself carefully, measured. That subtle energy gave the character presence without needing huge dramatic moments. Next, we have Sansa Stark. Sansa changed more than almost anybody. Early on, she felt sheltered, hopeful, naive. But over time, like much of us, the world hardened her, and watching that transformation became one of the major arcs of the show. What made Sansa stand out later wasn't loud confidence, it was resilience. You could feel how much the character had survived. And that emotional history gave weight to every scene. She grew into someone calmer, smarter, more observant, and that maturity changed the energy she carried completely. Next, we have Missandei. Missandei brought grace. There was calm intelligence there immediately. And unlike many characters constantly trying to dominate scenes, she often felt centered, balanced. Her loyalty and emotional connection with Daenerys also added warmth to the story. Then later, her relationship with Grey Worm added another emotional layer entirely. Those quieter emotional moments helped the character feel grounded. And grounded characters often become some of the most memorable. Marcella Baratheon. The older version of Marcella carried a softer presence compared to the chaos surrounding many royal characters. There was innocence there, and because Game of Thrones could become so dark, innocence often stood out strongly. She felt removed from the manipulation and cruelty that surrounded the political world. That contrast made her memorable despite limited screen time. Next, we have the Sand Snakes, Obara, Nymeria, and Tyene. The Sand Snakes all brought completely different energy. Obara felt intense, focused, dangerous. Nymeria carried confidence and charisma. There was swagger there. And Tyene mixed charm with unpredictability. That combination always creates interesting screen presence because you never fully know what direction the character is going to go. Together, the Sand Snakes added a different flavor to the show. More aggressive, more stylish, more impulsive. And what really separates these shows is that every character brought a completely different kind of attraction to the screen. We had elegance, we had confidence for a lot of them, intensity for some of them, and some had beauty that just felt effortless. And yeah, physical beauty absolutely played a role too. Naomi had that natural, believable beauty that felt grounded in reality, nothing overly flashy, just expressive eyes, softness in her face, and a presence that felt authentic to the world around her. Irene had warmth to her look, the kind of beauty that felt calming. You looked at her and immediately understood why characters were drawn toward her. Cleopatra was completely different. She carried herself with seductive confidence, the makeup, the stare, the way she moved through scenes. Everything felt calculated to pull attention. With Game of Thrones, the show constantly played with different styles of beauty. Daenerys had that almost mythical look, the silver hair, the pale styling, the regal outfits. She looked like someone pulled from fantasy artwork. Talissa had softer elegance, natural beauty that felt grounded compared to the larger-than-life royalty around her. Shay had attitude mixed with attraction. There was confidence in her expression and body language that gave scenes extra energy. Ilaria Sands carried herself with bold sensuality. The costume, the confidence, the eye contact. Every scene felt charged. Ygritte looked rougher and more untamed compared to many others of the show. And that made her stand out. She felt real instead of polished. Missandei had graceful beauty, very calm and composed, that kind of presence that didn't need huge dramatic moments to leave an impression. And the Sand Snakes all brought different physical energy too. Obara looked fierce. Nymeria carried swagger and elegance. Tyene mixed innocence with danger in a way that constantly caught attention. That variety is part of what made these casts so memorable. Nobody felt exactly the same. Every character brought their own style, personality, and screen presence. That's why people still talk about these shows years later. Not just because of battles, not just because of shocking moments, because the characters left impressions. Okay, so now I want to hear from you. Who stood out the most to you from Rome? And who from Game of Thrones? Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Drop your comment in the comments, and we'll see you next time on Hotties of a Show.